I haven't done a video in a while, so I thought I would do a short update. Spring is in the calendar, eventually. The sun is bright, things are warming up slightly, and I haven't done too much in terms of projects, although I do have something to show you. There was a video I did that showed the interior of the motorhome, and I mentioned that there was a clock that didn't work. Well, I made a slight modification. Up here, I removed the old clock and installed the digital clock. Actually, it's more than just a clock. It tells the time, it tells the temperature in Fahrenheit, and it tells the temperature in Celsius. That's exterior temperature. So now I have a much better clock than that old thing I had before. In addition, I had noticed that my generator hours meter wasn't working, so I had to replace that thing. It was fairly easy, relatively inexpensive, but this is required for me to keep track of the maintenance on the generator. So every 300 hours it's recommended to do a maintenance on it. And as you can see, it's 50 degrees outside. My thermometer indoors says it's 71. It's a fairly good insulation, although the furnace helps a lot. Better than the propane heater. But I don't plan on being in too many cold places. Speaking of maintenance, it's a good idea to have a record of the maintenance of a motorhome and the repairs. So I got a spreadsheet, built it up with all the repairs and maintenance that the previous owner did to the motorhome. Well, what little information I had from him. Some of it didn't have a lot of information like the mileage, but I extrapolated that, made guesses, whatever. Of course, I use OpenOffice for doing all that stuff since it's free and it's nice. I then added in future maintenance so that I knew when I was going to need maintenance in next, which is coming up actually, the 90,000 mile maintenance. And it just so happens that pretty much all the major maintenance procedures come due at that time. And that means I need to have the brakes and the bearings done, and I need to have the differential fluid changed, I imagine. And then I've got the engine oil and the transmission oil and the engine flush, of course. And then the generator is due. Well, I think the generator is due. After all, the generator hour meter wasn't working, and I don't know how long it hasn't been working. But just to make sure, I'm going to do the maintenance on it and start it at 0. And of course, the tires are 7 years old, and I'm going to have to replace those before I even set out on the highway. So unfortunately, taxes are done, and the government was moderately good to me, so I should be able to afford most of that, although help me out. Who's going to help me out? Which is nice because you get almost free labor. I'm not sure you could read this. I have a kind of cheap camera, but this is my maintenance spreadsheet. In this column, I've got the service that needs to be done. I've got when the maintenance needs to be done, when the maintenance was actually done, and the date, the cost, and who did it. and there's an awful lot of missing information here. That's because the previous owner didn't keep very good records, and that's really not something anyone should really do. Scroll here. Now I've got a lot of information here. That's what the last customer or last owner had. Fortunately, they kept moderately good records. And after all that, there's an awful lot of stuff you need to do in the future. Matter of fact, an awful lot of this stuff is due in the next few months. And of course, you can get these spreadsheets online if you want, or you can make your own if you know how to do spreadsheets. It's not difficult. And while we're on the subject of software, this is a little piece of software I picked up called Navigator from Map Factor. It's essentially electronic atlas, but I can get this software to navigate my routes for me. And it just so happens that soon I'm going to go from Kansas City up through Nebraska into South Dakota to Sioux City. That's because I'm going to be moving to South Dakota. It's rather convenient for RVers and people who have retired. Another thing about this software is I can set up the parameters of the motorhome. The width, the height, the weight, maximum speed, and it will take all that information into account when mapping routes. So that way I don't have to worry too much about low overpasses or weight restricted bridges. And this one is free, but of course they have a paid version with much more interesting features. But I'm cheap. Thought I would show that to you. That's pretty much it for now. Hopefully there'll be more things to show in the future, and hopefully things will get going on moving from Kansas. Well, if you have any questions or comments, please post below.